The newest arena in all of Division I sports is right in your backyard. And to be inside, you don't have to break the bank. With tickets starting as low as $12, you can see St. Thomas basketballs and hockeys in the brand new $183 million multi-purpose on-campus Lee and Penny Anderson Arena for prices straight out of 20 years ago. Proud past and pricing, bright future, and national postseason eligibility for the Tommies. The stakes are high, the setting is state-of-the-art. Get your tickets today at TommySports.com.
Just a heads up to you folks sitting with a notebook and pen, Mishki, the new podcast here in Garage Logic Land, is now coming out twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. If you're in fact scribbling this down, Wednesday is kind of tough to spell. It's not like it sounds. You want to spell it W-E-N-Z, but that of course would be a mistake. Friday is spelled just like it sounds. You're going to be okay there, but Wednesday's a bugaboo. Let me tell you people, just a pain in the patootie. Jeez, it's hard.
This is the Weekly Scramble, a place where we chat about life over a cold one or two. It's time to belly up to the pod with Mike Fratelloni and your host, Chris Reuvers.
That's right. It's time for the Weekly Scramble podcast. My name is Chris Reuvers. Mike Fratelloni normally with me each and every time, but Mike is tending to other matters. So I invited a new friend into the Weekly Scramble podcast, and he was nice enough to make himself available for the Garage Logic podcast yesterday. And when I was talking to him, his name, by the way, is Jim Rubin, the owner of Mint Properties, and he was featured in Rick Kupchela's documentary, A Precarious State. And I got to tell you, Jim, first of all, thanks for coming back today. I really appreciate you being here.
You bet.
And secondly, I know I told this to you on the phone, but I want my audience to hear this as well. I was so disheartened by your message, and I'm going to tell you why. Not by what you said, but by what you're dealing with. And I'm going to be very upfront and honest about this. I've been very outspoken on the Garage Logic podcast for a number of years. I have worked in the city of Minneapolis for 25 years since I graduated from college in Mankato State. Go Mavericks. That I have seen the slow trickle down, the paper cut decline of the city. I have worked in the service industry throughout my time here. I have worked events. I have done everything known to man in this city. I love this city. It's the reason why I wanted to move here. And what's happening right now is almost past the point of anger. I'm heartbroken. I'm absolutely heartbroken by what I've seen. I'm heartbroken by who has done this to this city and this state, because for the most part, most of the people in these positions of power that are making these calls, they're not from here. They weren't born here. They weren't raised here. They didn't grow up with a vested interest of the long-term growth and benefit of this city, and it breaks my heart. And I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, of course. In fact, through the years, I used to kind of almost laugh or chuckle because I happened to pick an industry, apartments, affordable apartments, inner city. And I happened to pick what I thought was one of the best places in the world, right? We had great jobs, a great economy. It was safe, the parks, lakes, bike. We had this whole set, all of these things coming together, in particular in Southwest Minneapolis, which is kind of the broad uptown area.
Yep.
So I was like, I felt I got lucky almost to end up building a business where I did. And you're right. We had that for a long time. And I would differ with you on something you said, though.
Please.
I don't see it as a small cut or a trickle, or I see this as an abrupt stop.
You do?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just as we talked in yesterday's podcast, everything was just great for the first 25 years. And it wasn't like it took several years to decline. I mean, it happened in a matter of really a few months in the middle of 2020, right?
That's a good point.
You start at the beginning of 2020, everything is great. Everything is still fine. Everything's great. The socialists were starting to have some impact, and some of their crazy policies we had to deal with. But still, all in all, we were able to function properly, and it was going great. But yeah, the middle of 2020, as I explained yesterday, I mean, things just came to a screeching halt. They just stopped. And so I see this as a much more abrupt change of direction. due to what happened in the summer of 2020.
That's a good point because I do recall when the Super Bowl was here in 2018.
2018.
And I was doing events. So the place that I worked at was the Exchange nightclub in the Lumber Exchange building, the basement of the Lumber Exchange building. And absolutely loved that job. And the guys that owned the bar, they used to come on when Mike Fredoloni and I used to do the beer show. They used to be frequent guests. And one of them said, "You want to bartend again?" I said, "Jesus, I'm rusty as hell." But what the hell? Because at the time, my kids were very, very little. And I thought, you know what? That'd be a fun part-time gig to go make some extra cash on the weekends. I ended up loving it. I ended up meeting so many people and making so many connections. But I remember the week of the Super Bowl and how vibrant downtown was. And between doing events with the radio station, because back then AM 1500 was a sports talk radio station, we had the ESPN connection, so we were doing a million events with that. I was working at night doing a million events with, did I sleep? No. Did I have a blast and make a lot of money? Hell yes, I did. But the city felt so different. And yes, I guess that was 7 years ago, but I guess you're right. That after that, things did change from the early stages of the pandemic in 2020, because we all knew at some point everything was going to get shut down. But I remember it was St. Patrick's Day weekend, and it was almost like everyone was getting one last cash grab for St. Patrick's Day weekend. And literally that Monday, the governor shut everything down. So you're right.
Yeah, and I do remember, the Super Bowl that's a big deal.
Yeah, the Final Four a year later.
And I hear people talk about that now, that, wow, just think back a handful of years. And the other thing you heard me do yesterday on Garage Logic is distinguish. Look, everybody, every town, every city got hit by COVID. COVID doesn't explain why we are the way there, because most of the other cities around the United States are doing great, statistically, comparatively. And so, COVID... almost coincidentally overlaid what happened here. Right? What happened here wasn't because of COVID. It was because of leadership and the decisions they made. So I tended, when people talk to me and say, "Oh, COVID, this," I'm like, look, that's not the issue. All town cities had it, and they are all doing better. Something else happened here.
And I know one of the things that was startling to me, and again, I got two boys. I don't have a social life anymore, right? So we're constantly on the go. But when I saw you and Rick highlighting the Uptown area, I'll fully admit it had been a minute since I've been to Uptown. But I recall how many times going there, it was the city, but you never had that worry of crime and whatever. You never had that. It felt like you were in a suburb, right? Because it was the city, but it was a different area. And for you guys to be walking down the street on an absolutely picture-perfect bluebird day and every rooftop was completely empty, it didn't seem real.
Yeah, I tell people, my opinion is, in the history of our state, probably the most successful intersection ever would be Lake and Hennepin had its heyday.
100%.
It was the place to be, and now it's boarded up, and so that's the level of impact. And we walked around the heart of Uptown, but if you were to walk further you'd see there's problems kind of all throughout. I think Hennepin, from that intersection north into downtown, has been closed for 2 years. It's still closed. So, yeah, there are a lot of issues around that whole area. And again, we talked about yesterday, but we look at what city council members are responsible for that area. And it's Ward 10, which is Katie Cashman, and Aisha Chugtai, and Ward 7, which is Katie Cashman. This has happened under their watch. Right. And it's been surprising to me, the level of impact that your local your particular city council member has. I've been reminded many times, if you look, interestingly enough, you probably don't know this, Ward 4 is up in North Minneapolis. That's Councilmember Vita. Typically been problem area for crime. They've actually done better. Their safety's actually improved under her. Right?
Okay, good.
It shows. Same with Rainville in Northrop and Palmisano down in Ward 13. When you have a good city council person who cares about safety and works with the police, they can effectively work with that to make their neighborhood safer. But again, if you're a socialist city council member, you fight against that, as we talked about yesterday.
Well, and I have been pretty outspoken about this on the show, and it was, from the early stages of the George Floyd riots and whatnot. And I had said, and I'm biased, I've always disclosed this, I'm the son of a retired police officer. And so I'm biased when I say this. And I said, we cannot continue to demonize the police force. We can't do that. We can't continue with this defund the police movement rhetoric, because here's what's going to happen. And I said this 10 years ago. I said, because what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is the good cops aren't going to want to do the job anymore because they don't feel that they're supported. They feel as though they're going to be criminalized. They feel as though if, they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, their life might be in jeopardy. So what's going to happen is you're either going to get nobody apply for the job, or you're going to get a bad apple apply for that job. And I've been on record saying nobody hates bad cops more than good cops. It's just plain and simple.
Yeah, that's true. And you're touching on an important point here, because you used a few different terms there. One of the challenges we have in this dialogue is it's generically known as defund the police movement, right? And the first response I get from a lot of people are, well, we didn't defund them. In fact, the funding stayed the same, or we've increased it. And that's only a small part of this. You're hitting on a lot of important points. What people generally call the defund movement is more like a kind of an anti-law enforcement movement. And what I mean by that is it's a collection of things. Part of it is they do some defunding. That is part of the equation. They don't increase the funding as much as they could, or they actually do reduce. So as a couple examples of funding in our city council, a couple years back, we had an opportunity to take $19 million of federal funds and apply it to hiring and retention. And the city council voted that down and applied it to some of their pet projects. The last time we went through the budget cycle, Mayor Fry had passed a budget. The city council got a hold of it, and I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 or 6 different times they pulled money from the police budget to put towards their pet projects. So defunding, working with money, is part of it. But possibly the biggest part is it's just kind of this constant vilification. The police are the problem.
The messaging.
That's
yes.
the message, right?
Yep.
And when you are a police officer and those responsible for you are saying you're the problem, you're the bad guy, and you need to be replaced, yes, you're correct. That makes it hard to retain good officers, and it makes it hard to hire good officers. So it's the second thing. The third thing that is interesting as you dig down is through the last handful of years, the city council has slowly pulled back tools that the police can use, loitering with the intent to commit a crime, or blocking a sidewalk, or tinted windows. There's a lot of tools that the police used to be able to use to approach people that could be a problem. That's all been taken away. So their tools, their ability to engage with criminals has reduced. And also the legalization of marijuana has made it harder too, because that now that makes their life harder to get into things like drug dealing. So they've taken away some of the tools. Another thing that you touched on is that particularly our Minnesota Attorney General and our Hennepin County Attorney have prosecuted police when things have gone awry. And so, the police officers are afraid that if they get into a high pressure situation, something goes wrong, they're going to be prosecuted. That makes police more careful and more cautious and more leery of getting out of their car, right? And another problem, again, as part of this overall anti-law enforcement movement is a soft on criminal justice system. I hear it all the time where the police officers are very frustrated when they do a lot of work to arrest somebody for doing something they shouldn't. They take them down in front of a judge, and the judge just puts them right back out on the street.
Right, it's a turnstile. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what happens is when you add all this together, that's why, of course, in the documentary we talked about yesterday, 19th and Nicollet, this all contributes to why MPD can't solve the problem, right? Because, again, they're afraid to get out of their cars in a high-pressure situation because they know the people there have guns and are dealing drugs, right? So they're afraid to get out of the car because if something goes wrong, they're afraid of it. They have a lot less tools to engage the drug dealers with, so it makes it harder. If they want to arrest somebody, they have to spend hours taking pictures, creating documentation, creating a whole explanation for why they're bringing somebody in. They spend hours doing that. They take it, and the judge says, "Yeah, don't deal drugs. Get back on the street." And the person's right back on the street. And this is why Chief O'Hare was explaining to me. This is why it's so hard for us to solve this problem, Jim. Is our our life has been made so much harder. Not to mention we have, we're down 40% in officer count. So I just want to highlight that this is a very important point to get across, is when we talk about defund, funding is only a small piece of the overall challenge here. And that's why I keep saying this is a hard problem to solve. So what we need leaders who understand these issues and can work through them. And even with these headwinds can build the force back up and re-empower them and support them to do their job.
Well, and I said this to you yesterday, and I think it's worth repeating here today. I mean, this notion that if you don't think the criminals understand this entire rhetoric, you're absolutely kidding yourselves, because they know who's in charge. They know what they're going to be able to get away with. And they also know that even if they're apprehended, the potential of them facing any type of consequences are so insignificant that they realize they're going to be right back on the street in a minute. And it's the accountability issue is the biggest thing I think that plagues our city currently, in my opinion anyway.
Again, accountability, i.e. actually prosecuting criminals, is an important piece of the puzzle that's missing. And
I say that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I say that because so many of these kids, I mean, I have a number of people that are friends in the school systems here in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. And this starts at a very early age where they don't have anybody at home that's holding them accountable for their actions and behavior and things of that nature, that it's just going to continue to fester and continue to get worse as they go through the school system and eventually get out on the street.
Yeah, and that's been, of course, a very kind of public issue we've had a challenge here, particularly kids, right? Because our Hennepin County attorney is not holding the youth accountable for some of the issues that
absolutely not.
So
no.
that is a big part of our problem now, which I'll remind you, in 30 days, of 25 days, is the election for Minneapolis City Council. In 13 months is an election for a new Hennepin County attorney. So one step at a time, we'll work through it.
Yeah. Let's make mention of our friends at North American Banking Company. You can find them online at nabankco.com to learn more. You know what? They're a great operation, and they've been at it since 1998. And when they started, they made a promise to deliver a better banking experience for their customers, where you know your banker and they know you. And while a lot has changed since then, this commitment to being a true community bank in the Twin Cities, well, that, ladies and gentlemen, that has not. You see, North American Banking Company invests in the people, business, and organizations that do make the Twin Cities a great place to live. And you get that feeling anytime that you walk into any one of their 6 Twin Cities locations, whether it's Roseville, 50th in France, Hastings, Woodbury, Shoreview, and Maple Grove. They offer all of the services as the other big national banks, whether you're looking to buy a home, perhaps finance a new home renovation project, or get that new car that you've been thinking about. They will be able to help you out. And they also offer all of the same online and mobile banking options as the other banks, but you're going to get the unparalleled service of a community bank. So check them out online today. It's nabankco.com to learn more. Once again, it's banking done differently. North American Banking Company, member FDIC, is an equal housing lender. You mentioned something interesting about the election cycle. And when I see things like whether it's Uptown, whether it's what used to be, I think, in my opinion, great neighborhoods in the city, and a lot of them were featured in this documentary that we're referring to. Do you think we're in a holding pattern? Do you think there is a chance that some of this, if not most of this, will have a chance to come back? Because you are boots on the ground. You have your finger on the pulse more than anybody that I know.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that because, again, I am affordable housing, affordable apartments right in the middle of the city, and we have a lot of them. And so statistically, as we go, so the market and vice versa. You hear this term kind of a downward spiral, right? People describe, our city or downtown, that's a downward spiral. As crime gets high, then businesses close. So now there's less people downtown. There's less people spending money. Crime continues to rise, and so it feeds on itself, right? As you have less people going downtown, less restaurants can survive, so more of them close, and it just slowly but surely winds down, or quickly in some cases. So there's a downward spiral that feeds itself. I believe there's an upward spiral. I completely believe this, which means if we get good leadership, and it's clear we have good leadership, we're going to turn. Mayor Fry is reelected, and we get a good city council. of moderate Democrats. There's a lot of really, really smart people out there that invest money here and everywhere else that are watching this. If they see Minneapolis has turned the corner and they're going to throw off this crazy DSA stuff, they will want to jump in quickly because they want to get in before the prices start to rise, right? So they're going to want to rent that retail space for a lower price. They're going to want to buy that piece of property for a lower price, right? They're going to want to, they're going to want to sign these. They're going to want to get engaged before things start to rise. I do believe that's what absolutely can happen, and you can have an upward spiral. Now, things are pretty tough, as you've seen in the video.
Right.
So it's not like this is going to happen overnight, but I think what you will see is an inflection point, and you will see things start to move inexorably back up. As we talked about, everybody in the city being elected is for a 4-year term. If we get a good leadership, that's a long time to make a lot of progress. I would contend by the time that 4 years is up, we'll be largely back to where, or on the track to get it back to where we were.
So I'm going to take you back to Memorial Day weekend, and I know the crowd has already heard this story, but I want to run this by you. So Memorial Day weekend, my boys and I went to the Twins game on, I think that would have been Saturday afternoon. It was either Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. And then the Timberwolves had a home playoff game that night. And I thought, oh, perfect. We'll do a twofer. We'll go get some wings at Tom's Watch Bar in between, and we'll have a great time. First of all, Tom's was about the only place that was open. And which, by the way, I love that spot so much. And so we go there, and I remember I was sitting next to, so it was me and my 2 sons, and I was sitting next to a guy probably in his early to mid 50s and his teenage, early 20-year-old son. And he looked at me and said, "Are you from here?" And he said, "We drove up from," I forget where it was, somewhere in Iowa, because we wanted to go to the Twins game and maybe take in the Timberwolves game. He said, "How come nothing's open?" And I said, "When's the last time you've been to Minneapolis?" But that's the thing. This is an outsider. Again, not someone that's going to continuously spend a lot of money in downtown, but just even that perspective alone was enough for him to say, "What the hell happened? Like, where is everything?" And then we had that conversation, much like you and I have had over the course of time.
Yeah. Again, it's a huge bummer.
Right.
It's a huge bummer, right?
Beautiful night.
I know.
Stuff going on. I think there was even a show going on at Pantages. So there were people. There was just nowhere for them to go.
Yeah. Again, that's why, as I talked so much the other day, safety is just so fundamental to a society.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
And it is the elephant. It's the big issue right now is safety and public safety and fixing that. Because what's happened now is people who don't live here have the perception that downtown Minneapolis is not safe.
Right.
Period.
Yep.
Okay. So when they come to a Twins game, they get off the train and they walk right in the stadium. They enjoy the game, and then they quickly walk back and get in their car
they get to ramp A, and then they get back,
and they get out of here.
And they get out of here.
They
Yep.
are not comfortable walking around. I have a little story I tell people all the time, which is it used to be. You go to, I go to Wayzata. I have a buddy who lives out in Wayzata. We go to Wayzata, and you talk to people, and we'd say, do you go to Minneapolis, to eat? And what's your favorite restaurant? And they would be excited, and they talk about all the cool restaurants. And if you go to Wayzata, downtown Wayzata, they say, "Do you go to downtown Minneapolis?" It's almost 100%. What? I would never go down there. It's not safe.
Right.
So if you drive, we have apartments near Eat Street. So this is a stretch of Nicollet, roughly from 28th to Franklin. A lot of restaurants there. It's sad. I mean, on a beautiful Friday or Saturday night, they are not full. They are struggling, and it's the perception of safety. There's reality of safety, which is an issue, and then there's a perception, which is a whole nother thing to tackle.
In fact, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember. So this is back. I know it's a while ago, but game 163 at the Dome. And it was because it was the anniversary yesterday, and I had a bunch of things that were popping up on my timeline. And I remember a crew of us, because at the time we still had the rights to the Twins on the radio. And so there was a bunch of us that went to the game. We went to a bunch of places, and then we just kept migrating. Get into a car, somebody's giving us a ride. And then we all made it all the way down to Uptown. And again, this is before I had kids and had a social life. But I just remember not at any point, at any time of that night, did I feel like my safety was in jeopardy. Not once. Not one time.
Yeah, we're of the similar generation, and we remember, which is kind of what makes it sad. But I contend The buildings, the physical buildings, the old buildings in downtown Minneapolis, the really cool ones, they're still there. Light rail's still there. The bike lanes are there, right? Everything, all the hard stuff is still there. This is just, again, it's leadership. We need leadership to help change the dialogue and to help fix the problems.
I want to ask you about 19th and Nicollet. And I know you addressed some of this yesterday on Garage Logic. And answer this any way that you're comfortable answering, and answer this in any way that you want to take it. When I saw the video that you gave to Capcella for this documentary about the absolute gang warfare shootout in front of your building, an intersection that you've been a part of for however many number of years, it was terrifying to me. And I'm curious, why did none of us ever see this until now? And I'm not blaming you, by the way. I'm just curious.
That's a good question. I say we, the neighborhood, we made the video available to people within inside the city right away because we wanted them to know what we're dealing with. And so people inside the city, leadership, have seen it. They saw it pretty quickly. But I'm not into beating people up or, of course, beating the city up. So I felt that the right thing to do is let's let the city see it and let them do what they can to solve the problem. Right? Before we blow this thing up or before it becomes wide known, let's let the city do what they can to fix this problem. And as you've seen, I've tried for a long time and finally got to the end of the rope where it's clear the cities can't fix the problem. And so that's at about the same time where Rick Capcella and I connected. And that's where we decided that, this needs to be told, right? And let's tell it in a way that is really going to get people's attention. Because this is so interesting. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been telling people around me for 5 years, oh, this is terrible. I have crime and there's shootings. Guess what? Nobody believed me. Jim, you're exaggerating. It can't be that bad. Oh, come on. Why don't just call the police, Jim? That's what they would say. You should just call the police. And finally, here near the end, I just got tired of that. So I started getting people in my car and driving them and showing them. And so they could see it firsthand and their head would explode. They're like, they couldn't believe how bad it is.
Right.
So, that's why it was nice working with Rick, is because we wanted to present it in a way that really got people's attention and really helped explain how far things have fallen in Minneapolis. But like I said, initially it was let's be respectful of the city of Minneapolis and give them a chance to kind of address the problem and do what we can. And we gave that a lot of time, and it wasn't addressed.
So you made the video available to city leaders, city officials,
right.
And what was the reaction from those city leaders when you sent them that video? Because let me rephrase that. You made the conscious decision to make this video available that obviously was presented as if, hey, this is a threat to public safety. I'm trying to help here. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So let me rephrase it that way. What was the reaction from city officials? Yeah,
and when we did go to the city, it was, hey, please help. Right, that was my message. Can you please help? So we had a series of dialogues. It kind of, I would say, culminated in, we had a large meeting with higher ups from MPD, both city council members, Cashman and Osman were in there, and their staff, and we showed it. And again, lot of yes, we'll help. Oh, this is really important, but they just don't have the tools to solve it. And so, honestly, nothing significant came of it. And again, I'm still in dialogue with the city. We talk all the time. I work with MPD. We're still trying to chip away at it. Again, they just don't have the tools to nip it in the bud.
Do you think they don't have the tools, or do you think they don't want to solve the problem? Or is it a combination of the two?
I don't want to go down the set, right? I don't believe the city doesn't want to help
okay.
me.
That's the answer I was looking for.
Everybody in the city's been great, especially in MPD. They really, really care. They feel horrible that they can't help me because they know this has gone on for a long time and we're feeling a lot of pain. But again, just like Chief Reuvers said, they don't have the tools. I mean, to solve this and really kill it, nip it in the bud, it takes a lot of effort. Now, I have been told on the optimistic side that the numbers of police officers are rising.
Yeah.
And they are.
Yeah, I saw that number too. Yep. And
that is a very good development. And it's at some point in time, they will get enough officers where maybe they can have enough, like, for example, beat officers, right? Officers who actually are walking on the street physically there. You get enough beat officer activity in the area, that could solve the problem. So some of this is a matter of time is in rebuilding up the police force. But again, some of it goes back to giving the tools to the police officers to do their job and then holding criminals accountable so that if they actually get caught, they do something. So we're not giving up. We're going to continue to work at it. But yeah, as of now, they haven't been able to. So I tend to think it's more of they don't have the tools to solve this problem as opposed to they don't want to solve it.
Are you good for a few more, or do you got time for?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I know there's a couple other things I wanted to get to, but I want to mention our friends at We Are Nuts and wearenutsmn.com. I know it's early October, but it's never too early to start thinking about those holiday gift tins. And We Are Nuts does a fantastic job for you people that are dealing with clients, customers, family members, and also for if you have employees. It's a great way to celebrate. And you know what? Everybody's going to be happy with those fantastic gift tins. In fact, if anyone wants to get me one of those other jumbo cashews, I'd be more than happy to take those off your hands. But also, if you're into any one of your local Fratelloni's Hardware and Garden Stores locations, Lunds and Barley's and Kowalski's, all of them are now featuring those beautiful end caps of the We Are Nuts packs that are all available. And if you're not able to get to one of those locations, by the way, go to wearenutsmn.com and place your order today. It's a great family-run operation based right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We've loved having them as partners here, and I know you'll be happy with the snacks and all of the fine products available at wearenutsmn.com. You hit on something right before I wanted to read that ad, and that's the undermanned nature of the Minneapolis police force. And I remember reading a piece a couple of months ago about crime data and how crime data is down. And while some of that might be true, one of the other issues is, and you touched on it yesterday with low-level crime, well, just because the data shows that it's down, oftentimes a lot of the, especially lower-level crime, just goes unreported. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem. And I think some people are trying to rationalize with that, either on the I'm pro-progressive ideology or I'm anti. Well, you have to have the stats to be able to back up your opinion in one way or another.
Yeah. Look, like I said, the MPD is focused on the most important thing, and they're making a dent. Fantastic. Homicides and assault, carjacking. That's great. And that is very important, and they should continue that work. But because of the shortage of staff and because of the how they've been handcuffed and doing their job, it leaves a lot of the lower level livability crimes not addressed. So what happens is, people stop calling. So a great example is 19th and Nicollet. We probably have called 1,000 times 911. Mm-hmm. Do you think people bother calling 911 anymore? No. They see the drug deal happen and they're just like, whatever. So, every bike that's stolen, every car that's broken into, how many are getting reported? I don't know. But my tenants, the citizens, it's the whole city. It's something we live with every day. It's just this low-level crime it just continues to happen. And so are they tracking it? I don't know. But I do know they're not addressing it. In fact, a joke that I have is we spent a lot of time over the years putting in bike racks, outside of all our properties because we want to be bike friendly.
Sure.
Well, bike theft has been about 100%. If you lock your bike, I don't care how good the bike lock is, to a bike rack, it is going to get stolen. Ask people who like to bike. Ask people. I mean, it's horrible because everybody who has so many people have their bike stolen, and again, there's nothing you can do. There's no help. There's no report. So you'll see now around all of our properties a whole bunch of bike racks that are being unused because no one dares lock their bike.
Sure.
It's
safer just to bring it up to their apartment or whatever.
Bring it up to your apartment.
Right. Which is a shame. Which is kind of counterintuitive to basically everything that the city has built its fundamental beliefs upon, right?
Yeah.
You would think that, and again, I've known so many people that have lived in Uptown, have biked to work every day because, that's just the way that they want to lead their lives, which is great. But you can't even trust that that's going to be a way of life you can lead anymore, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and this might be a loaded question. You got a crystal ball.
Okay.
You've been at this for a while. You're a very smart guy. You've had your finger on the pulse. Where are we headed? And I know you've talked about leadership in a lot of ways, and you've laid out the ways that Jacob Fry, if he's retained as mayor of the city of Minneapolis, we've got a shot. And I asked you this yesterday, and I want you to expand upon it. What happens if Omar Fateh is elected mayor of the city of Minneapolis?
All right. I'm actually going to expand this a little bit because there's a little bit of confusion. The documentary is called Precarious State, yet it's focused on Minneapolis. A lot of the challenge we feel in Minneapolis, there's also challenges we feel in the state, right?
For sure, yeah.
So there are issues. Just to clarify, there are issues to address at the state level, broadly, but also within the city. All right. So, what I think where this is going is, as we talked about from a city perspective, there's an election in a month or 25 days. The reason I mentioned the state is because there's a lot of state elections in 13 months. So I think you're going to see city and state. We have some very important elections going to happen here in the next 13 months collectively. Mm-hmm. Okay. That ultimately will determine where we go. Okay. Fair, right? If we get leadership that can address the issues as brought out in the documentary, I do think we're going to be fine because, again, all the fundamentals are still here. So if you go back to Minneapolis, as I explained yesterday, there's really two parts to the power base. There's the mayor themselves, and then there's the city council collectively, right? And whoever owns the majority of city council can kind of make things happen. If Mayor Fry were to lose, and presumably if the socialists maintain the majority on the city council, okay, now you have a situation where there's no checks and balances on the socialist agenda, right? Again, we've talked about kind of all the crazy things that they do want to implement. Anti-police is the biggest. Anti-public safety is kind of the biggest. But there are several others. There's, we talked about rent control or regulations or taxes. They're talking about a wealth tax, for example. You lose all checks and balances. What happens is, just to give you an idea, within the apartment industry, there's a lot of investors that invest around the country. And you're talking like billion-dollar retirement funds, for example. Right? So there's a lot of money looking to invest in place, and real estate's generally a pretty good place, so they want to invest in real estate. Well, today, if you go to like a national forum, it's clear Minneapolis-St. Paul is a place to stay away from. That has a huge impact on us, right? A huge impact on dollars coming in. If we get good leadership and start heading in the right direction, you'll see those dollars come back in, right? So it's hard. I said it probably. I keep telling people probably the main comment, the main phrase in this entire election is going to be my comment in the documentary, which is, "We can't last another 4 years." So you're going to cause so much damage that it'll take I don't know how long to recover, because what you see in the documentary and what people don't understand is already today in the challenge we're in, we have a good mayor, but we have a majority city council, and then there's some issues at the state level, issues at Hennepin County Attorney, right? So given the hand we have dealt today, our city is slowly boarding up. Sections of our city are boarding up one building at a time, right? That's already happening. Now, if you take away all checks and balances and the DSA totally run things, I do believe that will accelerate, right? And again, I don't know how long it would take to get out of it. Having said that, I don't think that's going to happen. I am confident there's a lot of people working very hard to get the word out onto what this DSA agenda is, what they've done, the damage they've caused. And we've been working hard. A lot of the community members working hard for over a year now to get a good slate of candidates across the city and to raise money, support them, get the word out, door knock, put yard signs up. We're doing a lot of different things. If you look at the numbers, today, I think people say we have anywhere, depending on how you count it, like roughly four good city council members, and the rest are socialist or socialist aligned. One of the four good ones is Andrea Jenkins. She's not rerunning. But the other three, Rainville, Vita, and Palmisano, they all look very good, and they all look in very good shape to win. Mm-hmm. So we spot ourselves three. And so now we just have to win four of the rest. And we're fighting on all fronts to do that. So I've been asked this question actually many, many times. What happens if Omar wins and the mayorship and the city council stays socialist? And I'll be honest with you, I largely ignore that question. I'm like, we can't go there. That's just a dark place to go.
Sure.
How about we just do everything we can to make sure we're going to win?
Right.
And that's where we're focused. But it would be bad if the socialists have complete control of the city. It would be bad.
And I do get the sense, I think in a large part, and we've touched on this, both you and I personally, and then also on the show yesterday. The main reason why I do believe that we're in this problem to begin with is the fact that, with people living such busy lives and everything else, there's just not nearly enough people paying as close attention as they probably should be. And I will be honest, and these are my words. I've said this for a long time with all of the rampant fraud that has gone on a state level. We were ripe for the picking, and that's the problem. For the most part, people from this area are good people. They care about others. They want to do the right thing. They want to raise good kids, and in some cases, they're vulnerable. Yeah. They're not, because they trust people too much. And again, I think that's why we, in particular, here in Minnesota, we were ripe for the picking. And it breaks my heart as a guy that's lived here my entire life to see what's happened. And that's why I think when I'd heard that this documentary was coming out, and I've known Rick for 30 years, I said, we got to have you on to come talk about this. And he wanted to wait until closer to the airing of the show. And I said, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I really think most people don't understand how close we are on the precipice of just imminent disaster. I don't think enough people are looking at it that way. Because if you don't get out there, if you don't do what you're saying, spread the word, elect the right candidates, people don't understand just how much trouble we might be in. And let's hope we don't get there, by the way.
Yeah, one interesting thing is here in the last handful of years, again, I'm in the apartment industry. I work with a lot of others in the apartment industry. I'm part of MHA, which is the Minnesota Multi-Housing Group. It's an association of apartment owners here. And for a while there, people were telling us that we screwed up, that we weren't paying attention to politics, and we're getting run over, and we need to be more active. And so we were getting criticized for not being involved. But as I look back and I think about it, I'm like, yeah, but why would we be involved? Because everything was working fine.
Sure.
The same with the citizens of the city. Why do I need to pay attention? It works great.
As you mentioned yesterday, The city worked.
And it's been DFL run for decades, and it's been great for decades, right? So why would I pay attention to more DFL people getting into power, right? So we were complacent and weren't paying attention, but that's not a ding on us. That's just because things were fine. Another interesting thing, though, that talks about why Minneapolis. Why did it happen here? And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is we were already very left. We were already very Democrat, right? So we're already, veering more to the left. But another interesting thing is Minneapolis, the size of the town we have 13 city council members. That's a lot for the city our size, which means small numbers of voters, not just to get the DFL endorsement, which is a piece of this, but also these city council races, a lot of them they get just a few thousand votes and they're getting in.
Right.
So that shows you that a small mobilized group of people can, again, because you're not having to deal with large numbers of voters and votes. Small numbers of people really working hard can help get you over the hump. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons it was easier to do here than in other places because we were already pretty far left, very Democrat. 80% of the registered voters are Democrat here. And the fact that there's 13 city council members, which means the actual votes you need are small. So that made it kind of an easy target for the socialists to come here and get a foothold.
You mentioned also yesterday, and this is one thing I want to bring up with you, that you said you were done, meaning you've decided from a business standpoint that you're done with this, you're done fighting, you're done, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is there a chance you'd come back?
No, there isn't, but let me expand. So I started to explain a bit yesterday that, what I've been through it's been hard.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And so, as human beings, when you're fighting what seems to be an intractable, an unsolvable problem, and you're sinking, it's very hard, right? You don't sleep, drink too much Jameson, your health starts to fail, right? And in this, the stress just gets so much, and so, in fact, I was talking to somebody earlier today and explained to him what happened is I got to a point where I'm like, I recognize, I was smart enough to recognize I can't continue on this path.
Sure.
I'm losing this battle, and I'm going to kill myself, literally, if I don't change gear here. And so I said, you know what? Yes, let's make something positive out of this. Let's just decide that I'm going to have a complete change in life, and let's figure out what my new chapter is going to be. And so I made the decision to do a 180, which is kind of interesting because up to this point, my plan was to stay here the rest of my life and have properties and die with, real estate and just enjoy it all the way around. So this was a huge change for me to make this decision. But I made it in honestly, almost to that minute, I felt better. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to fight this out. And kind of try to get myself geared up and excited about what's next, right? What exciting, I've already done apartments. I've already done that. Okay, what else is next? I mentioned yesterday too, we have 4 great kids. They're up and out of the house. None of them live here, which gives us as parents flexibility, the freedom to go somewhere else. And so for a variety of reasons, not just because of the challenges here, but also kind of my personal life, my personal situation and personal decisions, I've said, we're going to do this. And if you know me, as my wife does, once I'm in. Once I say I'm going. That's how I've always done it. And so, so we are absolutely committed, even if this turned out to be again, as great as it was, which it will. No, we're going to move on and just do the next chapter in life. And that's why it was interesting as I went through this. Then ultimately I came to the conclusion to make myself feel happy. I'd like to leave on a good note, not a bad note, which is why all this is happening and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's for someone like me, when I say, because, I get ripped all the time. Well, you live, an hour. Well, I did live in the city. Mm-hmm. And then I just slowly said, okay, probably don't want to, I don't want to raise kids. You know what I mean? It just became, for me, I've worked at Hubbard Broadcasting now for 18 years. And for me, it was just a decision where either it was safety, it was convenience, it was affordability, it was all sorts of things, right? Where, Joe rips me all the time thinking I live in South Dakota. I'm thinking, Joe, I live in Scott County, for crying out loud. I don't live that far away. But again, I get that perception, right? Because it's, for me, I made a decision where I wanted, if I leave my garage door open, my neighbor's going to shut it for me, not rob me blind, and that's the decision I made for myself. Like, I don't care that it's going to take me 45 minutes to get to work. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is the fact that I love my job and I love where I live.
One of the tough things for me and what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to be active. I'm trying to educate people. I'm trying to answer questions. I'm trying to plug people in. I'm trying to do everything I can to help get people engaged in what's happening in Minneapolis. And so I've talked to so many people, and honestly, it's heartbreaking. The number of people who have given up, who've lost hope, who hate it here, whose business is suffering, property taxes are too high, all these. And frankly, it's kind of for them that I'm doing this for them because I feel so bad. Right?
Sure.
That you're struggling, your business is struggling, you're unhappy, you want to leave. No. Let's fix it so people want to be here.
I was just going to say, because I can tell just by your personality type, you want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Correct.
Yeah. And I guess what I was going to say also in addition to that was us, meaning the collective Twin Cities community, us losing more and more people like you isn't going to make it better. But maybe we're wrong. Maybe somebody will come in that's going to be the next Jim Rubin that's going to want to try to, and let's all hope that is the case. But I think, and I've heard from so many people that I've known personally for a long time that have just said, I give up. And I think I've never heard that to the degree that I have within the last couple of years. And that's what's frustrating for somebody like me.
And it's, to me, again, it was so fascinating how many people got to that point. And I stopped and I got to that point. And I stopped and I said, what's happening here?
Right.
How did we get, this isn't making any sense. We have 8, 9 people on the city council that are wreaking havoc in our city. How did we get here? How do we have people that this is their policy and this is what they're pushing, this is what they want? How did we get here? And it's shockingly few people that are doing this.
Right. And I'll give you a perfect example. This building, okay, the Hubbard family has been in business since 1905 or whatever. It's been a long time. In fact, we just celebrated 100 years. What was that? Like just a couple of years ago. But this building has been here forever. For the first time ever, they had to install security gates around the premises. And that was 3 years ago, something like that. Think about that. This building has been here forever. And it was finally, well, okay. And we're in a great neighborhood by the University of Minnesota. But now it isn't that case anymore. And unfortunately, they had to take the steps that they had to make sure that their employees felt safe. And that's the situation the city is in.
And you have light rail right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Though this is a great neighborhood. We have buildings close by. I have buddies that have buildings close by. This has been a great neighborhood. The soccer stadium. Yeah. But again, it just highlights when you don't provide proper safety and security, it can't work. Yeah. Yeah. Same issues. Different town. We're in St. Paul, right?
Well, you know what? Do you know this about the building? The very front entrance where you walked in today and yesterday, the 2 doors that you walked through, so as you're looking at the building, the door that's on the left is in Minneapolis. The door that is on the right is in St. Paul. Okay. Did you know that?
No.
So and next time, because God, you know what? You're coming in again, just FYI. But when you come in next time, you can see that they have the KSTP logo on the mat and both the doors. Like I said, the left one is in Minneapolis and the right one's in St. Paul. And Mr. Hubbard designed it that way on purpose, which I think is so freaking cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. That is very cool. Jim, well, thank you so much for making time for both me and the series of shows here on the Garage Logic Podcast Network. I love hearing from people like you because it lends validity to what a lot of us have been speculating about for so long. And you know, I texted Rick last Thursday night. I got through about 7 minutes before I became completely enraged, and then I forced myself to watch the remaining portion of it with a cold beverage in my hand. By the way, and I urge anybody to watch this. If you haven't done so yet, you need to watch this because this is not some partisan political agenda. These are people that are in the absolute heart of what is going on in the city right now. And I think everybody that has any connection to the city of Minneapolis needs to watch A Precarious State.
And I'll just add, it is real. I've had, one of the comments is this was made up. It can't be that bad. It's fake. No, that's what's nice about what Rick did is he finally, we who have been, in the middle of this and struggling, finally have a venue to get to the general public saying things are tough here, right? You in your house south of Lake Harriet, who seems everything is fine, you need to understand that all is not fine in your city.
Right.
And so we, in my community, my friends, a lot of the people I'm working with are very happy about the documentary because it finally gave a broad audience a better understanding of the challenges that the city is facing. And so people can't just blow it off or deny it anymore. This is real. This is happening.
Well, and I've talked to so many people and friends and family that are outstate Minnesota, right? Well, what do I got to worry about Minneapolis for? You don't understand. Minneapolis is the lifeblood and the engine of the state of Minnesota. If it fails, we all lose. That's how it works. Anyway.
We're going to make sure that doesn't happen in November.
And I'm glad, and we'll touch base soon. But thanks, Rick, for coming in. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Please do us a favor, rate and review the show wherever you happen to be listening to the Weekly Scramble podcast. It helps other people find the show, and it helps us out as well, and we appreciate it. Mike Fredel will be back with us again next time, but my name is Chris Reuvers. My thanks once again to Jim Rubin of Mint Properties for joining us here on the Weekly Scramble podcast. We'll talk to you again next time. Until then, cheers. Holy shit, you're